David, this is so much fun. Rarely in life do you get to do amazing things at work with people you love, and we're such good friends. Before I'm going to let you introduce yourself, I just want to tell a personal story, if I may. So I moved to America 13 years ago. In many ways, this is my bar mitzvah, really, session, because I'm 13 years in this country. But just upon my arrival, we were introduced by a mutual friend.
Yep.
So you were very kind, because after spending time with me, you emailed me late at night, and you said, you asked me if I want to join you to the Masters. And I grew up in Israel. I didn't really play golf ever. So I searched what is the Masters, and I started golf. So I figured you were inviting me to play golf with you. and I replied, sorry, man, I don't really play golf.
Like I said, I don't think Tiger needs a playing partner this week.
Exactly.
It's a great group of people. We're going to have a lot of great food and watch some fun golf outside.
So this is how we got to know each other.
Yeah.
But before we kick this off, thank you for joining us. Do you want to introduce Zeta, you, and then we'll jump in?
So I'm David Steinberg. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm a serial entrepreneur for the same reason a lot of us are. I couldn't get a job. So when I came out of school, I started a company, and sort of 7 companies later, here I am. Zeta, which is a data and analytics platform, which helps very large enterprises to create, maintain, and monetize customers at a substantially lower cost than they can, not using our software and our data.
Zeta Live, which is, I just can't believe you pulled that thing off with the amazing people that are speaking, 3,000 people that are joining.
5,000.
5,000.
5,000. Don't cheat us out of that last 2,000 people.
So I don't know how you do that while doing everything else, but do you want to tell us about the event, what happened, how it came to life?
Well, we originally started Zeta Live a couple of years ago on the hope of starting to build our brand as an organization and to bring thought leaders together with the marketing industry. And, the first year was good. This year, I think, was just off the charts. And everybody coming together, it was amazing.
I think, there's a lot of conversation about e-commerce these days. We've been working from home. We're buying online so much more than we used to just go into a store. You actually did e-commerce back in the 90s. I'm curious from your perspective, what were the biggest changes, over the last 20, 30 years when you think about just e-commerce then and now?
Well, when we started my last company, which was focused on the e-commerce distribution of wireless phones, the biggest barrier was convincing people that buying something online was safe. People had massive fear of using a credit card on the internet. Today, it's ubiquitous, right? It's almost laughable, right? Because we all know that if somebody were ever to do something, we would be responsible for it in 99.9% of the cases. But the other thing that really has changed dramatically is just the speed, right? So you sort of have Moore's Law has really driven sort of e-commerce capabilities to an incredible level. I mean, if you look at page load times,
right,
were things we were worried about in 1997 when we founded that company. We were trying to get a page load time to under 30 seconds. I know it's laughable. Now it's like a 100th of a millisecond, whatever it is. But the speed with which you can operate, the trust which has been instilled in e-commerce transactions has really changed the game dramatically since when I first got into that game many, many years ago.
Trust is a big word, an important one, especially now for consumers and younger audiences even more. And I actually think that one of the biggest upside of e-commerce these days versus back then is that when you need to make a decision to buy something, you gain so much value by going to a review website. If you think about the New York Times, Wirecutter, right? And review.com by USA Today, and all these, which we had on Zeta last year,
yeah,
right? So all these websites that invest so much in reviewing products give consumers value that is unbiased, that help them make those decisions. I mean, trust is such a core piece of consumer behavior these days.
Yeah, well, consumer discovery is a mission critical component of the internet. It's why that little company Google tends to work, right? But if you think about it, there's long been opportunities to do discovery and research on the internet. And people have, since the late 90s, done a lot of that. To your point, the leap from research on the internet and purchasing offline to research on the internet and transacting online was a big one. And whether we cross that in 2000, 2005, 2010, 2020, I don't know, but we've crossed it, right? People look at that as a ubiquitous transaction.
I want to take you back, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, the last 2 years for everyone, for you, for me, for the industry. It hasn't been easy, from the pandemic times to a recession, inflation, supply chain. I mean, so much war in Europe, so much has happened. During that time, you took Zeta public.
Yeah.
And you've done such an amazing job, doing that. What is the secret for your success? What do you focus on? What can you share from that journey over the last 2 years specifically?
Well, that's a very big question. First of all, going public was something that most companies that are private equity backed at some point have to consider seriously, right? Because you have your capital structure set up in a way that you've got all these different preferred instruments that have come in. They've all got different timing in them. It's actually a very convenient way to convert your capital structure into a much more simplistic structure. Yeah. So, we turned down, I'm sure much like you, multiple offers to sell the company over the years, and have had a singular vision of really creating everything that a marketer needs in one place, which has helped us to really win in the marketplace. Because what we see is chief marketing officers want one solution. They don't want 17 different providers to provide data, analytics, activation, CRM. We do all of that in the Zeta marketing platform. But it's also made it a very confusing story, because you can't say, oh, they're them, or oh, they're them. So getting the company public was interesting. As a public company, beat 5 quarters in a row through the last 5 quarters. We've raised our guidance 5 quarters in a row. We did so most recently on our second quarter, which I'm trying to think about where we are in the cycle. We beat our second quarter handedly of this year. We then raised third quarter and raised the year. The really interesting thing about the Zeta marketing platform is it's so incredibly focused on the efficiency and efficacy of marketing that in a downturn, what we've seen is marketers are looking to spend less money, yet generate the same number of customers. Because our entire pitch for years is, if you do everything together, you use the data cloud plus the marketing cloud, we can do full attribution modeling.
Right.
So we're able to lower the average marketer's cost by almost 50% per customer acquisition or retention. Mm-hmm. And in a downturn, we've seen clients scaling up with us. So it's crazy to think that in the second quarter of this year, we grew faster than in all of the quarters prior to.
Right.
So, in the last 4 or 5 quarters, I can't say 10 years ago, but it's been really interesting to see that.
And by the way, it's remarkable to see the performance of the last, since we went public, especially during those times. And I do hear from so many marketers and agencies and publishers that, especially right now, people want to work with less partners and go deeper with them, which is exactly what you can offer them. I do want to speak about, when you look at another interesting trend and change over the last 2 years with TikTok. It's amazing TikTok is outbidding Facebook. Facebook is such a phenomenon on its own, and now we're seeing this thing that becomes even bigger, capturing more time in our lifetime. It's almost amazing to me to see disruption happening in front of us, and what can we learn from that? But I'm curious from your perspective, because you do want to provide 360 kind of view of a consumer behavior. How do you take all of those changes into consideration as you work with marketers? So the social networks, the open web, and consumer behavior changes. How do you keep taking all of those signals in to keep making your platform even more valuable to marketers?
I remember when AOL, Yahoo, and MSN were going to rule the world, right? Never going to change. And before that, it was, MCI, right? I mean, there's been incumbents that have been undone. And what I would say is the one thing that is consistent about technology is it is going to change. And today we're seeing a big change. A lot of it came out of Apple's move to eliminate the IDFA, which really hurt the efficacy of platforms that are mobile focused. And TikTok has sat outside of that because TikTok is so focused on Gen Z and Gen Alpha that they're really driving brand, and they haven't really focused on return on investment. So they've really become a bit of a juggernaut just because of the way they're scaling. Because I've been doing this now for 30 years, I made the decision when we founded Zeta to never be fully dependent on any activation methodology. So the Zeta marketing platform is activation agnostic. In fact, if you look at it today, our fastest growing business is CTV and over-the-top TV. We said last quarter that business grew over 300% year over year.
Wow.
And the key to our platform is the Zeta ID, the ability to identify the consumer anywhere using the Zeta ID. And as you know, we've never used a third-party cookie to identify individuals or build attribution models. And we've never used Apple's IDFA. So as efficacy has become problematic for some organizations, it's benefited others. I think TikTok's one of the beneficiaries. As we look at the landscape, I will tell you that with 100% certainty, whatever we think is the juggernaut today will not be the juggernaut in 10 years. There'll be somebody new who will come along who will be cooler. I don't know if it's going to be Real, or if it's going to be the next TikTok, or if it's going to be the next, major platform, whether it's Netflix adding an ad-supported model, Disney Plus adding an ad-supported model.
Right.
It's just going to continue to change.
Changes are happening. I want to keep talking about user behavior because you're seeing so much. I think that we're seeing, which is interesting to complement what you're saying, is because we see mainly what people read, and that's an interesting proxy for curiosity and
I think it's a very good proxy.
And so we're seeing, it's interesting, people read less about luxury products. I think especially after the crypto generation of the last 2 years, people are spending less on maybe scarce products of different kinds, but they overread and overspend on what makes them happy.
Yes.
Travel, experiences. Exactly.
So, and we continue to see this massive outgrowth from Generation Z, specifically around experiences versus items. You're seeing that really drive consumer behavior.
Another dear topic for both of us, and from your point of view and how your data cloud gets to see the open web and working with publishers, what are some of the trends you're seeing? What do you think publishers maybe should do that they're yet to be doing? What point of view do you have about the open web and publishers?
Well, listen, the open web, which is mission critical to the health of the internet in the long term, continues to be constricted by the walled gardens, right? So they're continuing to sort of drive themselves as differentiated from the open web. And one of the beauties of the Zeta marketing platform and Taboola is the ability to help marketers play in the open web at quite frankly, a more reasonable cost with the same level of intent. But we believe you're going to start to see more haves and have-nots as the third-party cookie dissipates. Mm-hmm. I don't actually think we're going to see it's going away. But as different browsers make it easier and easier for people to be like, I don't want to be tracked, I don't want to do this, I think it's going to get harder and harder for independent publishers to make a living. And people say to me all the time, they're like, wow, this is terrible. People are tracking what I'm doing. I'm like, I hear you, but would you rather see an ad that's relevant to you? Or would you rather see an ad that's totally irrelevant to you, with the understanding that if all marketing dollars left the internet would go away? Just like if all marketing dollars left, linear TV, content couldn't be created, you wouldn't have shows, it wouldn't exist. So I actually believe this is a positive for the consumer, assuming you're doing it the way we are, which is we're using it to target ads. We're not using it to do other things that could be, considered inappropriate. The larger publishers consolidate. They're going to continue to do better inside of what will become a series of what we're calling gardens. And those gardens might be open web today, but they'll begin to segment. Mm-hmm. Then you're going to have the long tail, which will sort of play into either native, which will be great for you, or some of the Google products where you're getting paid per click. But I think you're going to see a series of haves and have-nots in the publishing ecosystem in the years to come.
We talked about privacy just now and earlier. Another related topic is brand safety. We see a lot of marketers at times narrow down their inventory for the sake of getting more safety. And at times they're willing to be more exposed and take a broader view, but gain more scale. How do you think about brand safety versus scale and how to navigate them from Zeta's point of view?
Yeah, so because we identify deterministic individuals and we always are cross-referencing that with what they're reading, it's sort of very, very naturally built into our platform. That being said, if you look at the internet, there's always sort of this scale versus safety. And it's a mission critical function. Different brands look at it very, very differently. You know, you'll have a global soft drink brand, which is very focused on it, and you'll have a fashion brand that doesn't care, right? They, in fact, think some of that is cool.
Right.
So, you know, you've got to understand the marketer. You've got to understand what the brand's needs are. And, you know, quite frankly, I think, you know, it's going to be a conversation we have for many, many years to come.
I also think, you know, the more companies like Zeta and Taboola and others, you know, are spending time helping marketers see the value, create attribution models that they can tie into their goals. You know, it helps them be more experimental and try new things.
We believe that if you're not measuring your marketing, you're wasting it. We really believe that. Advertising ran alongside of the content people were consuming. That's how TV started. It's how newspapers started. It's how the internet started. Ultimately, I believe the content a consumer is consuming in that moment is less relevant to the actual intent of that consumer than what our platform could build by looking at a 360 degree of all of their behaviors, online and offline, transactions, what they're consuming. And I do believe that platforms like Taboola and Zeta will be leaders in that change. And if you look at our growth in CTV today, the vast majority of what we're doing in CTV is running deterministic video ads to somebody watching a television show.
That's great.
Versus an online video ad to a consumer who's consuming it over a web browser.
We're almost at the end of our session, which because we could have done this for days. Like, you know, there's no limits to how much we can chat about stuff.
I could just talk to you forever, Adam.
Me as well. But so I wanna ask one last question before I move to sort of my rapid, kind of like finishing question. So you recently announced an AWS integration. I believe that's the first marketing platform in that environment. What can you tell us that's interesting? Why did you do it? What can people expect?
Well, first of all, anytime you can partner with a platform that's the scale of AWS, I mean, it's going to be mission critical to us. We've actually been partners with Snowflake for quite some time, focused on clean rooms, data rooms, and they have been just such an incredible partner for us. Adding AWS and the credibility of being the first marketing cloud in the AWS platform as a native platform was a pretty big honor for us. And it's allowed us to integrate into other large enterprises faster. So where the client has Snowflake, we're able to really integrate. Where the client has AWS, we're able to really integrate. And I think one of the things that's consistently lost about Zeta is that the vast majority of our revenue is software-based. So what we're doing is we're trying to do these very large software integrations, and we're coming in through an RFP process. It's very, very helpful to be partners with platforms like AWS and Snowflake.
This is fun. Like we said, we just had Zeta Live. We've seen some of the most interesting, provocative people speak on stage. I'm curious, as you're thinking about the future, also on the back of what we just learned at the event, what do you think is going to be the biggest bets we might have? Is it metaverse, NFTs, something else, a mix of things? What's the future look like?
All right, so some very evident things came out of the conference, right? First and foremost, I think this sort of move from linear and analog marketing to digital is not just going to continue, it's going to accelerate. There's this narrative that, you know, we have this big leap because of COVID, and now we're going to go back. We're not. Because attribution to marketing is becoming table stakes to marketers, and they just really care about it too much to go back to linear where they're sort of guessing, right? 2, the blockchain is going to massively change the world, whether that's through NFTs, tokens, or cryptocurrency. I'm not sure we know yet. The ability to build provenance from the beginning to the end of a transaction, in my opinion, is going to be game-changing to everything from the internet to real estate, right? So when you look at that, you're going to have, just like sort of Web 1.0, you're going to have massive winners and massive losers. So what we talked about at the conference, and Fred Wilson and I did a great panel on sort of moving on from Web 2.0. And Fred talked about Web 3.0, and I talked about what I think is the future, which is Web 2.5. And, you know, I sort of coined that term around the concept of, I think there's a middle ground, right? So if Web 2.0 is large enterprises own everything, and Web 3.0 is the consumer owns everything, I think the blend is in the middle. If you're any level of creator, you're going to begin to participate in the marketing revenue of all of the big Web 2.0 companies today. I think they're going to move in that direction. You're seeing it with the top of the top. You're already seeing it. Mm-hmm. You know, Instagram's rolling out an e-commerce capability where they can participate. YouTube pays out more money to creators than probably anybody, right? So if you look at where that's going, I think that Web 2.5 is going to be the differentiator.
Thank you so much for doing this. I look forward to the next one we'll have talking about the future. Until then, wine and cigars.
Adam, love being with you.